Eilhart see in her Ciri chessboard that set the continent leaps always bleeding leaping between shattered skies, older than empires, forged 1,500 Geralt years before counts corpses in Blaviken's dust. Yennefer traces storms from a gull's perch. Eilhart see in her Ciri chessboard that set the continent leaps always bleeding leaping between shattered skies, forged 1,500 Geralt years before. Answer just lies in Ciri creatures, blood older than empires leapsa, but a god's shadow, vengeful. Threads in a weave corpses in forged 1,500 ritual did not Blaviken's years brore before dust empires. It answered a celestial wound, a game, a summoning. The first move never intended to end. What if the game board was never stone? Philippa Eilhart's pawns moved not for thrones, but for a throne long buried. The Lodge of Sorceresses did not scheme to control the conjunction's aftermath, they mined its bones. The primordial fracture displaced elves, shattered dwarven halls, and carved space for human kingdoms. Yet Philippa's ritual did not break empires, it answered a celestial wound, a game, a summoning, the first move never intended to end. What if each political maneuver was a glyph? Each alliance a syllable in an elven tongue forgotten by time. The Lodge's hidden agenda, not power but resurrection. A god's whisper, trapped in the conjunction's chaos, needed blood not of kings, but of a sorceress who remembered. What did she sacrifice to unshackle a god? The answer lies in the Lodge's silence, in the blood that stained the conjunction's stone, not an ending, a beginning. The Sintran princess bled into the Vengerberg crypt. The hunchbacked apprentice traced sigils in Kaer Morhen's snow. The witcher orphan knelt as robed figures whispered Lodge not a sisterhood, but a blade. Philippa Eilhart's owl form was no mere trick. Feathers glinted with elven script, a language older than the spheres. The Lodge called her strategist . The continent called them witches . Both were lies. Her hands, once gloved in Sintran lace, now pressed grimoires bound in dragon hide. The conjunction's anniversary was not a date, it was a wound. 5 centuries of preparation, stitched into prophecies, into treaties, into the blood of girls who learned to burn. The Lodge's feminist conspiracy masked a deeper hunger, a ritual to unshackle what slept beneath the world's bones. They say she drank from the font of Venediger to see the spheres align. They say the owl's eyes weep when the moon is square. What they do not say is this: her spells did not break kings. They echoed through time, through the hollow where an elven god's name was carved out. Every sacrifice, every war fed the stone's appetite. The Lodge's silence was not guilt, it was a hymn. The blood on the conjunction stone was not a beginning, it was a key. And Philippa Eilhart, with her owl's wings and a queen's resolve, turned it in the lock. What wakes when the spheres blide? The answer waits in the feathers of the first storm. The trial of the grasses was no mere gambit. Philippa Eilhart knelt in the ash of Aretus's straightening, her hands threading the conjunction's residue like a weaver of storms. The first contract she signed was with the void between breathsink, not on parchment, but on the continent's trembling spine. The Lodge's rise was a slow bleed. Each alliance, each severed treaty, a stitch in the ritual's tapestry. Elven vengeance, they called it, but the sorceress knew better. Empires are but puppets for the godless. When the conjunction spheres bled, she drank the spill. The first sorcery was not a spell, it was a sacrifice. A name whispered in the language of dying stars, etched into the bones of the time of contempt. Monsters born from that erat-wisted things with too many eyes, too sharp teeth were not accidents. They were heralds. The residue did not simply arrive, it awakened . Philippa's chessboard was a bloodboard, each move a glyph, each war a chant. The Lodge's covert operations were not to control men, but to clear the altar. The elven god's name was never spoken, it was remembered, not resurrected, not yet. But the ritual's edge is a thin thing. To border on awakening is to become the border. The monsters march still. Their origins are a secret the continent cannot keep. The conjunction's first blood was not spilled by sword or spell. It was spilled by a woman who understood that power is not taken. It is summoned . What stirs beneath the Lodge's marble halls? Not a god, not yet, but the feathers of that first storm sharp as shattered vowshave begun to fall. And every feather is a question. Who or what waits for the final piece to move? The chamber reeks of burnt sage. Philippa's hands are steady. The air hums with a hunger older than empires. She carves the sigil deep. Blood pools in the rune's throat, which are blood, sharp with cat DNA, thick with monster. A choice, not of politics, of resurrection. The conjunction's first breath is a noose around the continent's neck. The spheres align, stars fracture. Enel's name is not spoken, but whispered in the marrow of the spell. Elves raised Keedwin, elves cursed the bloodlines. Elves, now ghosts in the hunt's hollow eyes, wait for their god to wake. Philippa's ritual does not kill, it unmuffles. The wild hunt is not vengeance, it is a welcome. The Witcher's blood dries black on the floor. The conjunction storm is not chaos, it is a key. Every monster born in its wake is a syllable in Enel's forgotten tongue. Every war is a drumroll, every death a verse in the hymn of return. No empire outlives a god's patience. No sorceress bends what is already bending. Philippa moves the final piece. The board shatters, the sphere's first kiss is a wound, and through it, something ancient slips a shadow with a crown and the scent of elderberries. The continent's monsters are not accidents. They are invitations. Philippa did not break the world, she answered the knock. The conjunction was never an event, it was an envelope, stamped, sealed. And in the year of the first blood, a sorceress chose to open it. But the cost of that choice is what makes the dossier worth writing. To open the conjunction seal was to unleash a ritual older than empires, a god's whisper through blood and bone. The trial of the grasses, once wielded, became a scar across the Witcher's soul, its agony etched in flesh, its memory a curse. Philippa's chessboard bore no kings, only pawns sacrificed to a nameless throne. The first blood was not a beginning. It was a price paid in silence, a god's shadow stretching across the continent's wounds. The sorceress saw kingdoms as pawns, her fingers moved, empires toppled. Yet beneath the chessboard's veneer, a deeper game bled ritual fire gnawing at time's fabric. Philippa Eilhart did not merely fracture politics. She carved a gateway. The conjunction's first blood was not a coup, it was a hymn to a god the elves had entombed. Yennefer's womb, hollowed by magic's hunger, became a monument. The lodge demanded children as currency. What it gave was Baroness, a scar etched into flesh, a price paid in silence. The sorceress' own body, a temple of sacrifice, mirrored the continent's fate. Power does not gift, it devours. Monsters seep through the rift, not by accident, by design. The conjunction storm birthed more than chaos. It unearthed a shadow older than elven kings, its breath freezing rivers, its touch rotting soil. Enel's vengeance did not need a body, it needed a wound. Philippa gave it a wound. The Witcher's blood, thick with monster and man, became fertilizer for that wound. Geralt's mutations were not a curse, they were a covenant, a bridge between species forged in suffering. The continent reshaped itself around this truth, cities built on graves, alliances sealed with ash. What rises cannot be buried, what is paid cannot be repaid. The elves' god sleeps. The human's god is dead, between them a new order gnaws. Philippa's ritual did not end, it echoes, a hymn, a dirge, a price tag on the continent's soul. The hymn deepened. Philippa's hands, once instruments of balance, became chisels for a tomb. The lodge, that web of veiled power, had bred her as a weapon not against men, but against the void between worlds. She moved queens and kings like pawns, their wars mere incantations to mask the true ritual. A scar across time, a door left ajar. The wild hunt did not follow her. They were heard, their howling was the echo of elven tongues, long strangled by the first empire's collapse. Sapkowski's inversion bites, not hunters of the damned but jailers broken, sentinels turned feral. Philippa rode their storm not to conquer but to complete. The conjunction's rifts were no accident. She fed them with lodge secrets, with the blood of kings who thought themselves gods. Each sacrifice a thread in the loom, each death a syllable in the name she dared not speak. The sorceresses, their sisterhood of shadows, did not stop her, they let her burn. A scapegoat needs a pyre, a conspiracy needs a spark. Her eyes, once mirrors of reason, clouded with the weight of what she carried. The lodge exiled her not for treason, but for becoming too precise, a tool sharpened beyond its purpose, yet the ritual's final act required a body her own and a price. The hunt's horses now bear her silhouette in their hooves. The continent's bones tremble where her fingers once traced borders. What wakes in the conjunction's shadow, not Enel, never that name. A thing older, hungrier, its hunger the same as the elves, a world remade in absence. Philippa's legend is a wound, her exile a prologue, the hunt circles, the hymn swells. And the price, it is not paid, it is transferred to the continent, to you. The conjunction's wound still bleeds. Philippa's ritual did not merely fracture the spheres, it carved a door. El's shadows seeped through, unbidden. Ciri's footsteps in that realm were not a detour. They were a reckoning, the elf's vengeance, the lodge's schemes, the continent's monster saw threads in her design. No queen moves without consequence. The Sorceress game board is littered with kings reduced to dust, empires to ash. Yet the prize remains, a god's whisper, half-formed, patient. The elven realms of blood and wine tremble. Their hymns to forgotten names echo Philippa's own. A bridge, yes, but one built on buried bones. What lingers is not her triumph, it is the silence after the storm. The lodge, the Scoia'tael, the Nilfgaardian Crownthy circle, blind to the void beneath their feet. Ciri's journey did not end at El. It pooled there, a shadow in a mirror. The price transferred, it festers. In every wolf that howls at dawn, every specter that haunts the Nilfgaard, the ritual's pulse endures. Philippa Eilhart is ash, her engine unmoved, the god still unborn. But the continent breathes uneasy, its fate tethered to a sorceress' last, unspoken word. Philippa Eilhart's hands trembled, not with fear, with the weight of a god's breath trapped in a circle of blood. The lodge's archives burned behind hersage, myrrh, and the acrid tang of charred parchment masking the stench of old magic. She had not merely plotted the conjunction. She had stitched its threads into a womb, a cradle for vengeance. Across the continent, Ciri fled the wild hunt's silver eyes. Their howls carried the same frost that had seeped into Philippa's bones when she first read the elven script's cuneiform warnings of *El's slumber. The lodge did not fear human kings. They hungered for the return of a shadow that had once drowned empires in starlight. Philippa's ritual was no political gambit. It was a dirge, a bell for a god's awakening. The conjunction's first blood was not spilled in war. It pooled in the soil of Kaedwen's forgotten groves, where Philippa's sigils bled into the earth. The lodge's covert war-poisoned treaties, manipulated queenship had been mere prelude, a scaffold for the ritual's climax. When the spheres aligned, her incantations did not bend fate, they unraveled it. Ciri's journey to El's realm was no accident. The child was a key, a bridge between the broken world and the god's prison, yet Philippa's engine faltered. The lodge's ambition outpaced its wisdom. The god remained unborn, but its hunger seeped through Wild Hunt's restless march, the blight in the air, the way time itself shuddered near Novigrad. What does a sorceress sacrifice to birth a god? Philippa gave her name, her flesh, her final whisper. The lodge gave its legacy, and the continent, it waits. El's vengeance is not dead, it is merely delayed. The cold wind carries Philippa's unspoken word, not a curse, a countdown. The lodge's true power lies in what it hides. Beneath the scent of sage and ash, beneath the whispered oaths of sisters bound by blood and purpose, Philippa Eilhart wove a tapestry of shadows. The conjunction of the spheres was no celestial accident, it was a wound, a rift where time bled thin. She did not merely observe the alignment, she became its architect. Her hands, calloused from grinding herbs and tracing sigils, carved a path for something older than elven kingdoms, something buried beneath the roots of the world. The cold wind that night did not rise from the mountains. It exhaled from the grave of a god. The lodge, that thorn in the continent's side, had always been more than a coven. It was a rebellion cloaked in piety, a force that bent kings to its will while bearing the brunt of their wrath. Philippa's ritual turned this weapon into a conduit. The conjunction's first blood was not spilled by sword or spellet, was drawn by a hunger older than the Nilfgaardian crown. Monsters seeped through the fracture, not the mindless beasts of later ages, but harbingers, sentinels of a vengeance delayed. Their howls scarred the sky, their claws etched prophecies in the bones of the earth. Sapkowski's words echo, *, the lodge's true power lies in what it hides, * what it unleashed. The continent's nightmares are not random, they are the breath of a god stirring in its sarcophagus. Philippa's final act was not to rule, but to awaken. The witchers who came after, hunting strigas and lycanthropes, never asked *, why * the world wrought. They never saw the thread binding it, the cold wind, the monsters, the lodge's silent vigil. The countdown continues, not in numbers but in the slow, inexorable turning of the spheres. The first blood was drawn, the second is only a season away. What other secrets does the lodge bury beneath its ivory towers? Philippa Eilhart's chessboard did not merely shift kingdoms, it carved a path for something older than elven blood to stir. The trial of the grasses leaves no scars behind, only ghosts, only choices that fester in the bones. How does a witcher bleed when the blade is memory? Next, the ritual that bound human hands